Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 10 of The Green Agenda, hosted by myself, Kayla, Shannon, a Spelman alumna. And today we are so excited to be joined by Chakena. Before we get started, though, you all know, as always, we would like to recognize our sponsors, the Environmental Defense Fund and the Climate Action Campaign. Tonight's episode is going to focus on reflecting on 1 year of the lead and copper rule improvements, taking a deep dive into the strengths and challenges of the first year of the Biden administration's rule to eliminate all lead pipes in the U.S. over the next 10 years with the amazing, proud Chicago native, family of Chicago, senior policy advocate with the Safe Water Initiative at NRDC. So with that, before we get started, Chakena, is there anything our audience should know about you before we get started?
Look, I'm a born and raised Chicagoan. Look, you already said it for me, so I already love that you love Chicago, so we can jump right into it.
That's enough. Let's get into it, okay? Can you share a bit about, as we get started, this is something that we normally ask folks to share with us. Just what was your journey to environmental justice? What's your hero origin story, so to speak?
Ooh, okay, let's see. I had an abnormal entry into environmental justice and water advocacy. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Chicago, as we already established. Yes. So I grew up on the South Side in a neighborhood.
From the South Side, girl.
Well, we got to talk later. Okay.
Yes, go.
We got to talk. So I grew up in the back of the yards. So South Side through and through. And the back of the yards is historically known as being the EJ community. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's air pollution, noise pollution from all of the industry in the area, even all the way back in the day, they used to dump raw sewage into a waterway called Bubbly Creek, and it got that name because all of the chemicals and grease that was dumped in there, you can literally see water bubbling in there.
Disgusting.
It was disgusting.
Yeah.
So fast forward, so when I was born, 90s baby, all of that kind of changed. They cleaned up the waterways. There was more regulations and stuff put in place, but I was just always frustrated as a young person in my community, right? I lived in this big yellow house on the corner. Across the street was my elementary school from K through 8th. I had a nice park that I had a lot of childhood memories engaging in there. So we had green space and access to public transportation, but our community was grossly under-resourced, right? And it just frustrated me because I would travel throughout the cities, Chicago's known for segregation, redlining, and I would see what other communities had compared to my own, although we had all of the key ingredients to thrive. So that's what radicalized me. I was very early on, I was like, hey, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the conditions in my neighborhood, who or what has the power to change our conditions to improve our quality. Let's get to it. And I'm 12, 13, I'm let's call the older person. Let's go to city council. And all of that to say, fast forward to 2016, I was in my early 20s. All of that made me love voting rights activism. So I became an advocate, on the streets, registering people to vote, asking them what their interests are, and walking through the ballot. I came across an office that I didn't know. It's called the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, Stormwater Wastewater Agency, nine board of commissioners, all elected, over $1 billion budget, and I had no idea we vote for these people. And so fast forward, I worked for MWRD, that's what we call it for short. I worked there for 3 years. I got appointed to become a commissioner myself in the 4th year. So became the youngest elected official countywide at 28, and I was just that was my water journey at that point. So I went from, environmental justice community to being a water advocate, and now I'm doing drinking water work. So it's a blessing all the way around.
That's amazing. First of all, love a good origin story. It's my favorite way to start these episodes. And what intrigues me, you said you started as young as 12 or 13, right? Which is similar, actually, to my story. I got started in the city of Flint with social justice advocacy and grassroots work when I was 15, right? Yes. And so I'm curious because I know for me that what drew me into this work was having a network and a community of mentors, right? And folks around me who kind of poured into me and pushed me toward and forward toward this type of work. I'm curious about like what your network was like. Did you have family? Did you have teachers or mentors, or were you really like paving a road that you'd never seen before?
That's a really good question, and I'll shout out to you. Like, come on, young people. That's what I'm saying. Like, we
doing it.
We doing it. So I think my grandmother really was my example.
Come on, Grandma.
And still so much so, right? She never missed an election. Like, she always was voting. When she found out stuff was going on in the neighborhood in the back of the yards, like she's picking up the phone, calling the alderman. And that's kind of why I got frustrated, because I'm like, I see my grandma picking up the phone, calling, or, going to vote every election cycle. And we're not seeing any change in our community. Exactly. So that's what was really frustrating me. And then, like, once I, was that young person, in high school, popping up to city council meetings, calling Cook County commissioners, doing all of this thing, basically talking about education funding, talking about poverty, talking about all of these different things, like, people just naturally gravitated towards me, because I'll be like the youngest person in the city council meeting, and they'll just like go send a staffer to go figure out who I am and like what am I doing here. And so one person that like really put his arm around me, his name was Sean Rapelier. And so when I was in high school, he was like, hey, like, I'm not coming to like disturb anything you're trying to do. It's like, I just see like a young person that's trying to get involved with government, that has a voice, that's trying to be engaged, and I just want to work with you and, basically show you the ropes and offer my network to you. And we've been locked in ever since.
That's amazing. Intergenerational development and opportunity to, like, from the familial side, right? That, it's not on you, it's in you, right? So having it from that arena, but then also having a village of folks that, like, somebody who you said, like, took you under your wing and took you in like that, it just makes such a huge difference. And I, again, just wanted to be able to shout out your folks. So shout out our folks, okay? So from here, right, as we move forward, can you explain exactly, just for like the general knowledge base, if folks are unfamiliar, can you kind of break down for us contextually what the lead and copper rule improvements are, and give a little bit of historical background about them and how the rule has changed over time?
Okay, for sure. So there's a lot of acronyms coming, so we're just going to roll through them. So the Lead and Copper Rule Improvement, so LCRI for short, is nearly 50 years of advocacy, basically trying to get the Environmental Protection Agency to do something meaningful about addressing lead and drinking water crises across the country. And I look at LCRI in like 3 different ways. Like, one, requiring all cities across the country to replace lead pipes within 10 years. I'm from Chicago. We have the most lead pipes than any other U.S. city. So we have over 400,000. So we got an extension of a little over 20 years to get our lead pipes out. And a couple other cities got some extensions as well. But for the most part, the entire country, 10 years. Number 2, it requires like stronger testing protocols. And so this is water testing protocols. And this is beneficial, particularly for children, whether in schools and child care centers, because they're the ones that are at the greatest risk of, lead contamination, like neurological damage, brain damage, behavioral issues, emotional instability, all of these different things we just don't talk about enough. And, not giving young people a fighting chance like early on because they're drinking contaminated water. And number 3, we have what we called reducing the lead action level. And they moved it from 15 parts per billion down to 10 parts per billion. Basically, all that means is when water utilities go out and test the water for lead contamination, if it crosses a certain threshold, they have to, act. And now they don't have to wait until 15 parts per billion. They'll have to act on 10 now, and that's better for all of our public health. So that's the LCRI in its totality. How we got here, Safe Drinking Water Act 1974 basically tried to put the country on a national drinking water standard, like when it comes to our water quality, making sure we're not, contaminating the water and doing things we don't supposed to do. And so fast forward to 1991, you had the first iteration of like lead and copper rule, so LCR. Basically, the goal is, all right, you got copper and lead leaching into the water from like old infrastructure, so old pipes, old plumbing fixtures. Let's fix it. The rule was really weak. Like, it didn't really do anything. Like, it was like,
this is a problem.
It didn't really do anything. So, advocates across the country, were like saying, hey, we need to do better, EPA. Like, this is not going to cut it. Fast forward 2021, we have the lead and copper rule revisions, which is LCRR. I told you it's a lot of acronyms. And basically they were like, look, we're going to require water utilities to identify what the lead pipes are. So where are they? And then we're going to tell people if they have a lead pipe or not and what to do about it. That's cool, but like, I'm going to get this notification in the mail, and it's like, now what?
Yeah. Like, hey, guess what?
You got a lead pipe, and it sucks. Yeah. You got to figure it out.
That's unfortunate.
So that's why the LCRI is so important, because it actually moves from notification to action. And, you know, November 2027 is when the timeline goes into effect. So communities across the country are kind of just gearing up for that. And, yeah. That's the history.
I appreciate you making that connection and really breaking that down. First of all, come on, historian. All right. And I'm really curious because you talked about, right, all of the steps that we have taken to get here, right? And now we have just transitioned administrations, and whereas some of these improvements were made during the former administration, under the current administration, it has become difficult to actually move through and actualize some of the things that, you know, began, or even just continue the work. Some of it was actualized, but now even continuing and sustaining some of that momentum has been halted or slowed down. I'm curious, you know, about some of the barriers and obstacles that we're meeting or running into under the current administration as it relates particularly to the lead and copper rule improvements.
For sure. I mean, I think initially right out the gate, right, we had the AWWA, which is the American Water Works Association. So not the Trump administration, not to be confused, but, you know, one of the largest water utilities in the country basically came out and sued and said, hey, like, this is a lot. You want us to do what? Like, we're not doing this. So, you know, bringing suits. So now you have a bunch of, you know, environmental nonprofits, different environmental attorneys across the country. Basically, you know, boots on the ground is like, hey, we need to, you know, defend this rule. Like, it's important that we get lead out of our drinking water. We have research, we have studies, we have stories. Like, we've talked about this for so long, and we know how.
Why are you acting surprised?
You know, it's like detrimental to our health, right? And so now we have an opportunity to do something about it. Now you're like, oh, hold on. So that's one aspect that, you know, litigation that's currently in the background.
Even separate from the political sphere. I mean, it's all political, but even separate from the formal political sphere.
Yeah, so people are doing a great job with that. I mean, then now we come back to the administration, you know, right out the gate, you know, gutting the EPA offices, you know, anything pertaining to like environmental justice protections, the different aspects when it comes to like water quality standards. Like, people are being laid off left and right across the country. So environmental deregulation. So the administration has shown, like, within the first couple of months of them taking office, that like environmental justice, environmental regulations in general aren't a priority. So it's even more important now that community partners, advocates, like, band together and just make sure we're working in coordination, that we're strategizing together, and like making sure we're keeping the work moving. You know, it looks different. We have some nonprofit organizations that take federal grant money, so a lot of them had to, you know, rethink their strategies or even downsize. But then you have others who aren't impacted, and they're like, okay, how can we use our resources to help uplift those who've been most impacted and make sure this work keeps moving?
I think that's so good, especially in talking about, like, I think that is so consistent regardless of administrative shifts in administration and changes in the partisan culture and structure. I think consistently when you talk about federal rulings, right? Like the difficulty alongside the ruling, right? Because the ruling itself, or, you know, the finalization of a law and all of those types of things, that is like an arduous process in and of itself. The next beast, the next hurdle, so to speak, actually becomes the implementation. Like, how do you do it? So like it's all of the fight to get to a position, but it's not a finish line, right? Absolutely. It's like a shifting line that now, all right, you know, we fought this hard to have the initial rule that basically did nothing, and then to have the revisions to the rule that still presented gaps, and then to officially have the improvements laid out and a plan set in place. But now, how do we actually do it, right? What does it look like to actually hold our government accountable to what they have just promised, right? Like that's always the next big struggle. So as we, again, just continuing to move forward, because, I will derail us so far. Look, Kurt,
does derail us. It's okay. We can come back. We'll come back.
Take the scenic route, okay? So while the Biden-Harris administration made a historical investment of $15 billion in lead service line replacement, that still won't cover the funding gap to meet that 10-year deadline that you discussed. So with the administration's federal funding, as we just spoke about, being up in the air, what innovative financing solutions or community-led initiatives can help to bridge that funding gap and ensure equitable implementation across communities? Like, what opportunities exist for folks to really diversify their revenue structure?
I think that's a really good question. I think before I even answer that, like, right out directly, I just want to mention...
the scenic route.
Just a little bit, just a little detour. I think that we, as water utilities, like when I say we, like, have to stop treating like lead service line replacement as like this separate like beast, right? Like, it's no different than any other critical water infrastructure project. And when we just treat it separately and say, oh, we need like all of these like really specific things and we can't do this, it's just like same thing with water main breaks, like same thing with any other infrastructure improvement. We prioritize it. It's like, why aren't we prioritizing lead service line replacement? So that's like my first gripe, before I even answer your question directly. But what I've seen with the places who have done lead service line replacement the most efficiently and equitably, whether it's the state of Michigan, whether it's Newark, New Jersey, they required water utilities to pay for the full cost of lead service line replacement, right? It's the best way to do it, right? It's the most sustainable funding source. It spreads the cost across all customers, so folks in disadvantaged communities aren't carrying the burden where a lot of the lead pipes are, like cities
in divested communities, for
absolutely,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're all over the place, right? Lead pipes impact everyone's water, it doesn't matter where you are, but they are disproportionately in communities of color and low-income communities. And so we shouldn't carry the burden of having to remove something we didn't put into the ground. And so when you spread those costs across all customers, it's more equitable. So that's something that, both Michigan and, Newark were able to do. And then when we're talking about just even looking deeper into people's, like the city's financing structures, you hear a lot of cities and municipalities like right off top say like what they can't do. So it's not like a can do situation. It's like, oh, can't touch it. We've already talked about it, not digging deep. What I've noticed is that with other cities like Denver, for instance, or like, even Chicago is trying to work through these things now, are like, what are our self-imposed barriers in our legal analysis and our financial structures that historically we've said, oh, we can't do this because of the interpretation of certain language, or this says this, so we can't do it. It's like, no, like, let's just reverse engineer this.
Can that just be changed?
Can it just be changed, right? And it starts with that political will to just say, hey, like, let's dust off the same things we said we weren't going to touch, and like, let's just start over, and like, let's start from the basics and figure out what we actually can do instead of just saying we're not going to touch it. So I think those two things are important. And then from a community perspective, I think any city should prioritize community engagement, right? I think at the end of the day, when people need to get their lead pipe replaced, they're more likely to opt into the program if you have someone trusted that you know, or a community organization that's boots on the ground doing the work in the community, coming to your door saying why lead service lines are replacement is important, what the public health benefits of it are, and why you should do this. And also just being transparent about like what the process looks like, right? If they're, there might have to, you have to dig up the ground a little bit. They might have to go into your basement and do some stuff. Like, what does the restoration process look like? And I think the more that cities can actually like have a designated fund to be able to prioritize community engagement, I think more cities across the country will be able to like get their lead pipes out much quicker.
I appreciate that. One, just because I'm a huge nerd about fund development, and so I appreciate just your perspective and what you were able to offer as far as supporting organizations to understand, right? Oftentimes folks assume that the gap that we're experiencing as it relates to funding is a lack of resources, when really, as you said, it's like the allocation of resources, the way that, the choices that policymakers or folks in these positions of power are choosing to make with the funds that they have available, or the amount of red tape that has to be overstepped or redrawn in order to just get to the money, right? Like the amount of fighting, because in so many different situations, there's like money that ends up getting sent back to the federal government for projects like this, right? That the money trickles its way down, but it's so convoluted, or it's like the restrictions on it are so fraught that it's almost impossible to actually get the money to there are varying different situations, right? That sometimes there's just infighting in the local government, and there are all of these different things, right? But it's so important for us to be aware of the plethora of avenues that exist to get to the resources that are available, right? And I think there were a couple of things that you said that really stuck out to me, and hopefully to our audience as well, because these are things that I feel like we speak about regularly on this show, which is one, that it's so incredibly important to have some level of community engagement instilled or developed into any type of community project.
Exactly.
Right? Like when we are talking about community development, especially in the areas like this that are so deeply entrenched into like public health, right? There should be every opportunity for the community to be a part of what the next step looks like, and to imagine what the best solution is for their community, right? That they are not, again, like just third party, like guinea pigs, objects of study, that they be actively involved in decision making spaces. And so I thought that was so incredibly important. But then also something else that you said that really stuck out to me is the fact that this is not a partisan issue, right? It is not a place-based issue. Like, this is a nationwide epidemic that is going to touch everyone. Like the issue of water, if it is not touching your home today, it will soon.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think that's so incredibly important for us to touch on in this current climate, in the current political climate, because there's so much that is being politicized that simply just is not political. Like, these are human issues. These are not red issues. These are not blue issues. And if we are not careful about what we get caught up in, it becomes very easy to get drawn aside by issues that may be important, right, but that are partisan. And I think it's so important for us to more often put it at the forefront of our agendas, of our brains, of our minds as the electorate, right? To put to the forefront of our minds. I keep saying brains when I'm in mind. To put to the forefront of our minds. Hello. That's how you know it's the last episode. My brain is getting tired.
You got it.
But to put to the forefront of our minds, the issues that are human and not partisan, right? The things that truly are about everybody's quality of life. And that's not to say that the partisan issues are not important. There are a lot of things that are partisan, that are split across a partisan divide, that are incredibly important issues. But there's also like 70% of our agenda, right? Mm-hmm. that truly is like, these are basic needs, basic rights. When we talk about healthcare, right? When we talk about access to water, when we talk about access to clean air, when we talk about like, these are things that, you know, they don't have an address, right? Like they will touch every citizen of our country if we are not careful to keep our eye, to keep a watchful eye over these issues. So I just wanted to point those two things out very quickly, but because that just was so incredibly important to me. So as a follow-up, moving forward to our previous question, can you explain what state revolving funds are and why these programs are so critical and what challenges are existing currently?
Yeah, so I look at state revolving funds as like a large federal state partnership. Like I almost look at it as kind of like a bank in a way, because like you have the federal government that provides like a bunch of capital, and they say, hey states, take this capital and you figure out how to disseminate it. Like I got some guidelines, but like you administer your own program. Like you set the criteria, you set the anything to just take this money. Mm-hmm. And so then it's on like the local communities, like the local municipalities, to, you know, basically get their ducks in a row. It's like, all right, what aspects of my water infrastructure needs improvement? So being able to lay that out clearly, being able to put a plan in place, being able to know like how much money you actually need to do certain things. And so once they get that application together, you apply to the state and there you go. And so I think for state revolving funds, you know, it's either a low interest or zero interest loan that a community can take, or you can do grants or principal forgiveness. So, you know, free money. So like, come do what you got to do. But as you know, we've kind of talked about this, like water infrastructure issues are so, you know, it's been so underfunded for so long mm-hmm. that the amount of problems that we have in this country, like the amount of money that's available at the state, like mostly they get more applications than they actually have money to actually give out. And so you have a drinking water state revolving fund. So that's either lead service line replacements, that's water main replacements, PFAS reduction, or you have the clean water SRF, which is, you know, runoff prevention, stormwater mitigation, updating, you know, wastewater treatment plants. So there are a variety of things that, and they have their own separate application processes. But yeah, like it's just money that's available for folks to do local water infrastructure projects. And I think in addition to having just a limited amount of funds, we're noticing like smaller communities that don't have the capacity to actually like pull together this like, you know, convoluted application, right? They don't have all of the pieces that they need. So there's been like a lot of pushes for technical assistance to actually mm-hmm. make sure that the communities that need the most funding actually have the ability to apply for the funding and see the process through. You also have you know, even stepping back from the process itself, we even saw in Illinois, so we have a Illinois Water Justice Coalition, and we participate in like the public comment periods every year when the Illinois EPA puts out what they call an intended use plan. Mm-hmm. And so intended use plan is basically like, they put out the draft and they said, these are the things that we're intending to fund this cycle. Review it, you know, submit public comment, let us know what you think, and then we're going to take that feedback or not take that feedback and finalize it. Mm-hmm. And so one thing we noticed, like when they would post the intended use plans, like early on, they're like photocopy stuff and upload it as a PDF. And I'm like, this is hard to read. Like, I can't command F and search for anything. Like, it's not really accessible.
It's not accessible.
And so when we start like thinking about like, okay, there are some technical things about the application that could help get money out the door quicker. Like, yeah, let's get into be policy wonks and get into that. But like just the general public even engaging with this document, like let's expand the public comment period. Like let's ask for technical assistance. Like let's make these documents readable. And then even just stepping back and like what other things could people use this money for that will help make their lives easier? So like set aside. So can we do set asides for community engagement? Can we do set asides for workforce development? So there are just like a lot of different things. And like each state is different, right? Each state has their own process, their own scoring criteria. So I can't speak, for everyone, but there are some consistent things across the board that communities that need it the most often don't get what they need. And how do we make sure that smaller municipalities actually can like see the process through?
Yeah, I think I was just having a conversation today about the barriers that often exist to funding for those who need the funding most, right? Mm-hmm. Or are best positioned in community because they're trusted organizations, right? Because they are engaged in community, right? The organizations oftentimes who are like at the grassroots level, I mean truly grassroots, right? Mm-hmm. Who could really benefit from the opportunity to have funding that would allow them to scale, expand extremely innovative ideas, simply do not have either the literacy, and I don't even mean basic literacy, which is a whole nother issue, right?
How to
these
navigate
documents,
these applications.
Yes. So I mean, like, not even just the basic literacy that they're not written at a level that the average American reader can understand, but even furthermore, like the professional literacy, mm-hmm. because even folks that like are university educated, right, that you would expect by social standards to be able to understand like a professional document. Mm-hmm. It is convoluted. Some of these, proposals or requests for proposals and grants and things that trickle down from the federal or even the state, the state level, are like 20 plus pages.
And that's being nice.
And that's
20.
polite.
It's being really nice.
That's polite.
Like, I've been doing this for a couple years and I'm still confused sometimes. And I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, I don't even know. Yeah.
Like, why don't we just say it in English?
Yeah, I mean,
like, why don't we just and that is like and that has major implications, right? Because you and if we're gonna be so for real if we're being serious, mm-hmm. okay, these are creating undue barriers with intention, right? Like there are people that it seems are like automatically weeded out of the process because they're daunted by a proposal where it's like, I don't understand what you're saying. And it's like even organizations who are greatly aligned with the goals that a grant or an opportunity may be trying to accomplish, like I don't even know what you're saying. I don't even know what you're asking me for. Like, I've never heard of that document.
Nope.
You just created this process. You don't even know if this process works.
But even the water utilities, though, right? In these municipalities that's like really small, they only have like 2 or 3 people working there. So it's like, you want me to serve the residents, whatever constituent needs they have, do the policy stuff, do the city council meetings, the community hearings, do fun stuff. I can do all this. And you want me to be a grant writer. You want me to go track down all this information. You want me to like build a budget I've never done before. Like it's really requiring a lot and it's just inequitable, right? Because
and it puts the onus back on the communities that have experienced already like this, because taking it all the way back, right? When you were talking about your hero origin story, you were talking about the dumping site, right? So these are oftentimes communities, those who are best positioned for environmental interventions, mm-hmm. right? At the most critical stages are communities that have often historically been used as dumping sites, right? Whether it be literal physical dumping sites into the water or onto the land or into the air, or it's just like, we are going to throw this, this factory here. Like, we are going to throw this, like, literally, and it is the same communities that we were talking about, the data centers, right? Mm-hmm. These data centers that have been popping up, like these are communities that have like the data centers and the factories and the dumping sites and also the communities that have the greatest difficulty in accessing the resources in order to address the gaps and the barriers that were caused by the systems that are now offering them the money. Like, it's this cyclical, and so again, it goes back to, this is not a partisan issue.
It's not.
Right? This is a human, it is a basic right to have access to clean air, to clean water. Like, that is like one of the most basic rights that we have, like to have that kind of access. And so real thought needs to be given at these in these executive levels and in decision-making spaces to be considerate of the audience. But in going vice versa, right? Real thought needs to be given at that level, which puts the onus back on the electorate to consider who you're putting into office to make these decisions, right? And that's why it's so important for us to be aware of who makes the decisions.
Exactly.
Right? Like, and to not, I know it's so difficult at this current time because there's so much going on and there's so much, it's like we are being inundated with information and with every day there's a new obstacle, there's a new thing, and there's a new, executive order, and there's a new this and there's a new that. But it's so incredibly important to not get set off track that the federal government only has so much power. The president himself only has so much power, and there are things that we can do. There are powers that we do have, and there are local institutions and groups, deciding bodies that are making decisions on an ongoing basis that are going to affect your quality of life tomorrow, like this year in your community, right? Outside of what's happening at the federal level. Getting off of my soapbox.
That was good. That's a good soapbox, though.
Hello.
That was good.
Thank you. Good. I appreciate that. Okay, so moving forward, so we just finished talking about like some of the challenges, right, that are that those revolving funds have. And one of the things that we talked about is just the lack of connectivity, right, between the deciding parties and the communities that are engaged. But another gap is trust between those communities of color and government, especially when it comes to environmental issues, because, again, another history that is just fraught. How do you think that local water utilities can build trust with communities of color in a meaningful way, ensuring that our voices are heard and our concerns are addressed throughout the lead service line replacement process?
I think that's an excellent question. I mean, I even think about my own family, right? We never trusted our tap water. Like, we always bought bottled water. And, now that I'm back home with my family and, when I found out we had a lead service line in 2023, so I used like the online database that the city provided. I saw we had a lead pipe. So I said, let me go buy a lead certified reduction water filter, installed it. And, every 3 months I swap it out to make sure like our, water is safer in the meantime. But we just always just had a distrust, and I don't think that's unique.
It's like automatic.
Yeah. You just can't really put your finger on why. It's just like something's just a little off. And yeah, it's not unique to my family. It's just like growing up on the South Side, it was just a visual we have, having like packs and packs of water just kind of in our kitchen, just waiting to be used because we use tap water for everything, right? brushing our teeth, for like boiling water, for, you know, cleaning vegetables and fruit and all, for drinking. A lot of people use it for various reasons. So if you have even like an inkling of distrust, it's like, yeah, let me go find something to protect myself. And so just speaking.
And that's not even to mention, sorry not to interrupt, but that's not even to mention now all the studies that are coming out about even bottled water.
Bottled water,
and the distrust, like, it's just an added layer.
It's never ending, right? It's just like, you know, what am I supposed to do? Like, I need water to like function as a human being. It's just like, okay, I can't trust this or this, so now what? And so like going back to your question though about like water utilities bridging trust with the communities. So this kind of predates me coming to NRDC, but NRDC collaboration with maybe I want to say like 12 other like local grassroots organizations, as well as some larger environmental nonprofits. They put together a document called The Principles for Lead Service Line Replacement. And it's really comprehensive. It's basically like if any water utility, any city wants to like take on lead service line replacement, like these are the things that you're supposed to do to make sure it's efficient and equitable. The part that I want to zero in on is like the community engagement piece of it, right? I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, right? You just can't just send some random person to somebody's house and was like, hey, I need to replace your lead pipe. Like, you might get cursed out, or you might get the door closed on you. They might not open the door. They might not even open it.
Because, look, my family, we used to...
You understand? Like, open the blinds and be like,
yes,
yeah,
nobody's home.
No one's home. And so that's the first problem. So we can, like, reduce the refusal rate, like I said, having trusted partners and community folks actually doing that type of outreach. But the parts that people don't talk about the most, right, is making sure, like, how are we actually disseminating information, right? Like, it's not just like, is it certified mail? Is it your website? Is it social media? Like, is it a phone number? Are there community hearings? So just having like a diverse amount of options for folks to know like what their options are important. We can't just rely on what we used to do, because just times have changed. People just engage with information differently, and our attention spans are just not what they used to be. So it's like, get to the point. So
getting shorter every day.
Shorter every day. So that's important. But also, like, in addition to how we disseminate information, is like, is it in like different languages, so folks of all cultures can have access to it, right? It can't just be in English. It has to be in multiple languages, and like in very clear language of like, okay, not this like wonky stuff of like, you know, what the pipe and all that. Like, just get to the point. Like, why, how, when, and how much.
Just
so,
answer.
Like,
yes,
just get
the key question.
Just get to it. So I think those things are important. And then I think going back to like an earlier point, right, just making sure community is at every stage of the process, from the planning to the prioritization to the strategies. I mean, there are opportunities that...
And reporting back and following up.
The feedback, like all like what's working, what's not working, all of those aspects. So, I mean, I can go on and on about it, but as you see, it's just kind of like if community's not at the center of the process, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Because it's too wide scale of an issue. It touches too many constituents. Every neighborhood is unique in its own right. So you need like people on the ground that understand the culture to like help you get over those hurdles.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you said about having community involved at every stage of the process, right? Because I think oftentimes, and I know we've spoken about this previously, like there is a touch point at the beginning. Yep. Sometimes. If they even try, if they try, there's usually at least some type of touch point.
We're gonna give them the benefit
at the
beginning. We're gonna say they tried.
Yeah, they tried. So there's a touch point at the beginning, right? And you may get one more, maybe like a follow up, like maybe midway through the project, like, hey, and that's like if they're really trying, right? That's like, maybe they have 2 people on their team instead of just one. Okay, but after that, like beyond 1 to 2 touch points, community gets lost in the sauce, right? And it really is a disservice to the work for community to be unaware of how they can be involved, because if you get one trusted, community service provider, right? If you get, we talked on an episode just recently, like if you get grandma, the Black grandma, I know you know who I'm talking. You know, look, if you get the black grandma, or if you get the local pastor, or if you get the local influencer, or if you get, if you just had one or two trusted individuals in the local community, the mobilization, the force behind, and so often, folks are so caught up in being the savior. Yeah. Right? Like being the fixer that, putting the city on my back, and I'm going to come in. And what is lost in that, what waters it down, is the lack of, you don't even know my story. No, exactly. You don't even know my hood.
And pay them though. Right?
And pay them.
Because I want us to treat this knowledge just like we do any other level of expertise. Like, this is expertise too. Like, it doesn't have to be in the classroom. Like, you ain't gotta have 10 degrees. Like, I have a degree on my hood. Like, I know the ins and outs of my block, and you need to pay me for it. Like, that's my
every
thing.
Time.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But they're not ready for that conversation now. I don't think so.
Look, we barely passed 2 touch points.
We're not barely past 2 touch points. Like, I'm too far ahead. Like, I'm just gonna slow down.
Let it catch up to you. Let it catch up to you. Okay, so moving right along, one of the major rule implementation challenges is ensuring that renters have access to lead service line replacement without carrying the economic burden. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Unlike places like Newark, which you've mentioned, many cities, counties, and towns don't have local or state policies that best address this challenge. What advice do you have for local and state policymakers? And I know you talked a little bit about putting the onus back on the cost back onto the institutions that can actually afford to replace them. But is there anything else that you want to add to that topic or conversation? What can local and state policymakers be working on?
Yeah, I think in addition to that, when the city of Newark, when they passed that ordinance, another measure that they put in was called the right to entry provision. Mm-hmm. And the right to entry provision, there's 2 things that they noticed, right? When they go talk to homeowners about lead service line replacement, if the homeowner says no, that opens up the door for what we call a partial lead service line replacement. And we don't like partials. Like, we need full lead service line replacement. So we need the public side, we need the customer side, mm-hmm. we need the whole pipe gone. Like, mm-hmm. not just one side, because that don't do nothing. It don't do anything. Like, it just makes the problem worse, mm-hmm. right? So New Jersey, they figured that out on the front end. And then follow up, they noticed that all of these people who are, living in these properties that are renters, they can't get in contact with the property owners, right? It's like, where are they? Why aren't they responding to our letters? Why aren't they answering the phone, or whatever the method of communication is? They even found out that some of these people don't even live in the state that they own property in.
Sounds about right.
And that's not fair, because mm-hmm. if I'm living in this household and I'm spending money, like paying your rent on time or not on time, regardless, that's none of my business. That's none of my business. But I'm living in this house. I should have a say on whether I get my lead service line replaced or not. And so that's what
the answer should be an automatic yes.
And that's what the right to entry provision did. It provided opportunities for residents to give contractors permission to get their lead pipes replaced. This sped up the process, because now Newark was able to do lead service line replacement on a block by block level. So we're not just coming in to auntie house right here and saying we're going to get hers, and then we're going to skip your cousin next door because they don't want to do it and all that, and now we got to keep digging up this ground every 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. That costs a lot of money. People don't even realize, having to do what we call hopscotching, costs way more money than just knocking out blocks, full blocks at a time. Mm-hmm. And so that's what Newark was able to do. So with their ordinance, with, providing that sustainable funding source, having that right to entry provision, and then we could talk about this a little later, probably workforce. They just had all the key ingredients to get their lead pipes out quickly.
Well, get into it now. About the workforce? Yes, ma'am.
It's just more about I just don't think we're talking about it enough, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we're talking about financing or funding and financing. We talk about the community engagement, but who's actually going to get the pipes out of the ground? Mm-hmm. And there's a shortage, right? It's study after
trained
study,
professionals
all the time. And I just think that there's ample opportunities. If we're strategic. So again, we keep joking about one thing at a time, but I'm gonna need somebody to take some time,
put it together,
and just put it some coordination. Put a plan because we're running. We're about to start running up against deadline soon, and we just don't have a workforce ready to get the job done. So I think we can look at city colleges. We can look at, workforce development organizations that's on the ground. We can look at schools, like high schools, and just create a pipeline. But, requires funding too. But all of those things can kind of be thought about hand in hand. And I think that's what Newark was able to do, right? They actually were able to sit down and say, hey, let me bring the union leaders together. We're going to sit down, and then we're going to bring all these other folks together and that need a job. And we're going to figure out how we're going to work together in a harmonious fashion, because I know your program, I respect your program and what you're doing, but we need a workforce. And so how do we bring these folks in and you teach them what they need to know, and we put this on the books as a project labor agreement to get this work done. And they had the, like I said, the financing to do it. They were able to get it done block by block, and I just think it's a good model that other cities could, adopt, or at least take some pieces that may work for them.
And that goes back to earlier this season, we had someone who was who came on the show, a guest who talked about the high demand in the trades industry right now, because we have all of these clean energy promises across the spectrum, right? Whether it be lead service, pipe replacement, or there are just all of these ongoing deadlines, construction, all of these different kinds of things. But the professionals to actually carry out the work, there has not yet been that investment. And there's also a coinciding, we spoke about stigma on trade professionals, as if they are less than, or that it is a less honorable route than college, or some of the when really, child,
we see them that paycheck, that post certification, so people got to pay attention.
I'm reconsidering my career. Look, y'all out here. So that is it's so important to also bring that up again, right? That trade professionals is out here getting it, right? And when there is a high demand for any career field, right? When there is a high demand and a shortage, of the price point is going up. So I'm just, I'm going to remind y'all, if you're not in the trades today, okay, you might just want to think about it. When I tell you the industry, because folks is struggling to find a job right now. If you're looking for a job in this economy, the trades is out here getting it.
I just want people to be able to provide for themselves or their family if they have one, and be able to live in the same community that they're doing good work to get some work done, right? I feel so
and you
often
can see the difference that you
so
make.
Often they have to leave their community to go get employment, because there's nothing offered in the neighborhood. I gotta go travel an hour and a half outside of my community for work, and we can just be intentional about bringing the work to folks and help with unemployment rates, help spur economic development, actually keep people in the community and not feeling they have to leave and go elsewhere because for various reasons. So I don't know, I just think, not my job, but but
I'm telling you, if the bag is there, baby, go get it. Go get it. Hello. That's the moral of the conversation, okay? So already we've come to the end of our last episode of season 5. That was a good one. And I just want to know, before we wrap it up, if they didn't hear anything else, and I always say I hope they heard everything else, because you dropped some gems for sure. But if they didn't hear anything else, what is a final message that you would like all of our viewers to end with, or a call to action?
Ooh, a call to action. I would say that do not let any of our elected officials off the hook when it comes to the quality of our drinking water. We've just seen too many major events across this country where what goes wrong when people make bad decisions, when they try to cut corners. I just personally don't think there's enough people fighting for poor people in this country. There's not enough attention on Black and brown communities, and we just keep getting the short end on all of this stuff. And so there's a lot of us. We have a voice. We all have stories. And I think that the more that we use our voice, whether it's showing up at city council meetings or engaging in these public comment sessions, calling your local alderperson, calling your state reps, state senators, like, and just letting them know, like, I know there's an array of issues that impact our community. Like, I'm not telling you to, like, make water your number one priority. Like, I get it.
But
however,
put it on the agenda.
Put it on the agenda and make sure, because the more people we have talking about it, the more pressure that's applied. And so when, you know, our back is against the wall and we got to start getting busy, like, they can't say that they didn't hear from you. And so that's all I want to say is just, you know, make it a priority. Tell people that you want safe and affordable drinking water, and just keep calling and, like, annoy them.
Don't let up, man, because the squeaky wheel gets the oil every time. That's good. So to all of our viewers, before we wrap up, I do want to remind everybody to please check out our sponsor EDF's Lead Service Line Roadmap and the Lead Service Line Collaborative's resource video. These are helpful resources that you can view at your leisure to support you to have a better understanding of some of the implications that these issues may have in your own community and to stay informed. But in the meantime, in between time, we have come to the end of another amazing episode of The Green Agenda. Thank you for joining us so much, and we hope to see you soon on the next season of the show. Bye.